I love it. I
The
love the
insert
intro.
the insert topic never gets old. It just never
No.
gets old, and I want that to stay. So we are live on Real Estate Unscripted, and I am pretty tickled to introduce my pal, my friend in the industry and in real life, Alex Camelio. Welcome to the broadcast, and you're on the heels of a fun
Awesome.
chat I had with Jay Thompson
I
last
saw that.
broadcast. And I think you chimed in a couple times, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I love Jay. Jay's amazing. So following on his heels is a challenge to be overcome. So I don't know that I'll ever be able to do that, but Jay's awesome. So
well, your heels are gonna do just fine. Trust me, your heels are gonna do just fine. So let's see. I first met you, I want to say, at some event. If it wasn't Triple Play, it was Bar Camp or maybe Lucky Strikers or something like that.
I'm pretty sure it was the very, very first Bar Camp, New York City, where Lucky, because I never ended up going to well, I did, but it was like one of the very last Lucky Strikers events, but it's where Lucky Strikers had already turned into New York City Bar Camp.
Yeah.
And it was that very first one up in the hotel at like the top floor or whatever of that hotel or building that we went into, and you can kind of go out in the balcony or whatever. I think you're right. I think you're right.
Roger Smith.
Yep. But that
the
was
social media friendly hotel.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, that's funny. But yeah, that was I think that was our first meeting. It was through Patrick and that whole crew.
Right. And the most memorable memory I have, and we're going to get into what you do. But the most memorable memory, I hate redundancies, but okay. So the memory that sticks with me is being at Triple Play. This is probably around 2012, 2013. Enormous hall at the Triple Play convention. And you are there with the Barcode venture, Barcode publicity, Barcode websites. And you were like inundated. You were like Austin Powers with all the girls chasing him, just beating them off with a stick because everybody wanted what you had at your in your booth. And across the aisle from you, I don't know if you remember this, but across the aisle from you was a print company, and they were like visibly growing cobwebs. And if that didn't speak to the direction the industry was going and who had the pulse and who didn't, I don't know what does.
You want to know the irony right now, though, about that?
Sure.
I now own and run a print company. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
That's the amazing part of the industry itself is I always look at it as, and there's a great book, but I'm blanking on the title at the moment, but it talks about sort of shark infested waters.
Yep.
And when the water becomes so bloody, you can't see. And if you can't see, how can you actually get clients? Because there's all this competition. You've got to do something to stand out from what everybody else is doing. And at that time, and really what that comes down to is finding problems and figuring out ways to fix them. That's sort of the simplest way to say or to put it. And at that conference, where that came from and how that happened was that we positioned ourselves. We knew that people were having a challenge at that moment in time where their websites were great, but there were a lot of people trying to access their websites from mobile devices and having a really hard time doing so.
Yep.
That was a problem that they were facing right then and there, that they knew about, that every day they had clients saying to them, gosh, I wish I could do this on my phone, or couldn't you just send this to me on my phone, or,
yep.
Things like that. And that was so prevalent to them in such a prescient or whatever problem that and I spoke at that conference too, and it was just one of those things where it all led together and people realized very much at the same time, getting this part of my business taken care of is a lot more important than, say, the print piece that I might want to put out, or the other piece that I might want to put out, or the other things that I might want to do.
Yep.
But we've advanced to a point. I was actually just having this conversation. I've had this conversation a couple times recently with friends. We're sort of advancing to a point where technology is peaking out a little bit. Where there's not really that much advancement in technology. And this is coming and just so that for the audience that may not know who I am and all that sort of stuff, I taught myself to code at 10. I still actively work on coding projects and writing code on top of being the CEO of a company. So I'll be on stage and then go off and then write 1,000 lines of code and then go back on stage and teach about marketing and marketing concepts and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like I'm, just some random person that's like, oh, technology's peaking off. It's like, I have been working in the depths of technology for a very, very long time. And what I always look at when it comes to sort of technology and the shifts in technology and so on is, does this piece of technology fundamentally change how we're doing something? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't want to use the example of, I sort of hate this example of using Uber and replacing taxis, but that fundamentally changed standing on a street corner going like this for a taxi to doing it on my phone. That was a fundamental change in how someone did business. Same thing with mobile technology, where, and I love this moment where, do you remember, since you've known me so long, do you remember the number of people that used to make fun of me about QR codes?
Yes.
And how they had no place in marketing and they were
Digital
never going to be
vomit.
adopted. And
I
they
suffered
were
with you.
Yeah, you did.
I
You
suffered with you.
100% did.
Yep.
And now we see them everywhere.
So
are they not everywhere?
I got a great QR code, like Spike the Football, I told you so moment.
Okay.
In 2013, you probably remember this. Inman did their innovator contest.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I was a finalist along with, I think it was Rapid Realty. My innovation was putting QR codes on for sale signs. This guy's innovation, and I'm not kidding you, was having his brand's logo tattooed somewhere on his agent's body. Right? He would give them a higher split if they tattooed the brand on their body. He was selected as the innovator of the year, and I was runner-up. I don't know of an actionable commerce that can come from having a real estate logo on your ass.
No, not at all.
QR code is being used more.
But, and here's again the way where I said fundamentally, and this is where I got made fun of a lot for at the beginning. You did as well, right? We got made fun of a ton for this. But when I looked at the technology, I said to myself, does this technology fundamentally change how we're doing something in our everyday life?
Yep.
And if you think about it, the QR code replaces the notion of typing in whatever long URL that someone wants to put on a sign.
Yep.
That's a fundamental change in how things are being done and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm going to go shots fired because I know we have Tim in the background here, but crypto is not a huge advancement in the technology of real estate.
Oh boy.
It has not fundamentally changed the way that we do anything.
Well, it's currency.
Double act. I'm more thinking about the notions of blockchain and the whole background beyond all of it, right? Tim says, right?
Yeah.
Now, decentralized currency is a totally different concept than crypto.
Right.
right? So we can talk about the benefits and the possibilities of there eventually being a decentralized currency at some point in time in the future, and I don't want to get down that path.
Right.
What I'm more talking about is the blockchain technology and the notions of using blockchain and some of the crypto offshoots of blockchain to be able to manage the blockchain to actually do something different in real estate.
Yeah.
It doesn't fundamentally change anything. We don't track documents any differently. There's a better trail of how we track documents, but that's not a fundamental change. We could have done that, and we were doing that with existing APIs.
Yep.
The security components of it have already been broken, so on multiple different levels. So it's proven to be not necessarily more secure than double access tokens and other sets of encryption and so on and so forth. And it's incredibly expensive to run compared to those double access tokens and so on. So we're talking like security levels of like 0.001 versus 0.0001, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Did you add
amount
a
of
couple
money.
How many extra O's did you add there? Just
I added one.
one. Okay.
I added one extra zero on that in
Okay.
terms of the difference of possibilities of security. And we're talking
Right.
well sub to 1%.
Yep.
Now, when you factor all that in, the amount of money that you end up spending on blockchain technology to start doing some of the stuff that we're having it trying to do, it gets really expensive to start doing certain parts of the procedure. And if you build your entirety of a platform or the entirety of what you're doing in that sort of framework, the costs become pretty enormous to do what it is you're doing for a lot of it.
Yep.
And like I said, nothing in that process has fundamentally changed. Like let's just say, for example, right now we have title search, right?
We do.
So
We do.
this might do a better job tracking a title as we go, but does it 100% replace title search?
Not yet.
Not yet. And
Not yet.
will it even, and let's think about this for a second. If it were to get to the point of replacing title search where you had the entire record the whole way through, right? That would mean 100% adoption of all of the court systems and all of the state systems to actually put their liens and so on and so forth into whatever platforms. That's never going to happen, even just from the sense of filing errors and so on.
Yeah.
And then the second part is you're still going to have to run a search of the internal system itself, which costs money on the blockchain to be able to do to prove the title. So there's nothing, even if you're searching in the system, there's no difference to doing a title search. There's no fundamental difference to how this changes how the people operate.
Isn't it amazing, though, that you can have a discussion about the real estate industry like we are now, and none of it has to do with the granite countertop?
No.
You know what I'm saying?
No,
like
yeah.
we're talking, this is a extremely like kind of a philosophical, maybe an esoteric kind of approach to this. And I got to say, you probably are having conversations that 10 years ago you never thought you'd have. I have conversations that I never thought I would have. And I just wanted to list and sell houses, right? You wanted to get clients, etc. I want to go back to what you said about taxis and Ubers and the disruption there and how it fundamentally changed things, because it was not just I can get a taxi on my phone. It was a whole cascade effect where you could see the ratings of the driver.
Yep.
Can you imagine hailing a taxi and knowing that this guy is 2.5 out of 5? Wait for the next one.
Absolutely.
Or this guy's 4.9 out of 5, and the one that wasn't a 5 were drunk college kids that were just being jerks, right?
Yep.
And the riders can also be rated, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's probably other cascade effects as well, but I'm intrigued by one thing you said. And we're going to come back to blockchain too, because I have a feeling you're going to be able to find other applications. But how crazy is it that what's old is new again? Not just QR codes, print.
So, and this is one where people don't know this, but if you go look, Amazon is invested in print. So the last 2 winters, if you are a Prime member or somebody who spends a certain amount of money, you're getting a print catalog around the holidays where you actually have a physical print catalog. I actually have them here.
Somewhere Sears and
They're in
Roebuck
that
are
bookshelf.
Just rolling over in their grave at Sears and Roebuck.
100%. It is literally a page out of the Sears Roebuck like Christmas catalog that they used to send. And they're doing that. They've invested.
Are you even old enough to remember that?
I have older parents who also have older parents. So like my aunt is like 92. My parents are in their 70s. My grandparents would be like well into their hundreds, 115, 120 at this point.
Dude.
So I grew up with I got a lot of that sort of stuff, a lot of those references passed on to me because I grew up with an older generation. But yeah, Sears Roebuck, same thing. Burger King has started investing in print marketing again. A lot of the venture capital groups have started investing in magazines and print again. And we're totally getting into this whole what's old is new again, because, and it's that same thing I said before, which is when the water gets bloody, you can't see anything and you don't stand out. So like our email inboxes right now, I know every person watching this, your email inbox is overflowing every morning you wake up.
It is. It
doesn't that's the reality.
It is.
And then your social media feed. Do you remember a time where you could get to the bottom of your social, and maybe this is just for some of the OGs, but do you remember where you could get to the bottom of your feed and Facebook would actually say like, we don't have anything else to show you right now. We're done. Like, that's it. Right.
Yeah. Cause we had 75 friends, right? Nobody was putting out much content. Nobody was, publishing their manifesto every week.
Right.
Every day. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my inbox. So it's a funny meme that went around years ago. There was a time when we'd get snail mail, paper mail, envelopes, and like, we got mail. But oh my God, someone sent me an email. And now it's different. Now our inboxes are overflowing, but oh my God, someone sent me a handwritten note. Michael Shappett, who is do you know Michael? He's a fantastic broker in Manhattan. Just a great guy. And he, every so often, if we refer him something, sends me a handwritten note. And I could count on one hand the number of people that actually do that. Like my fiance's mom.
And
you're one of them.
And I'm one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about the print. Tell me about how print has made a resurgence of sorts.
A resurgence. Yeah, totally. It's really made sort of this resurgence, I think, in 2 categories. One is exactly what you just explained, which is your email inbox is so overflowing. And when someone takes the time to send you something personal, especially when it's print, that you feel special because of it.
Yep.
I think the added part on top of that sort of takes it to the next level or whatever is that the younger generations never lived during a time where their print mailbox was overflowing. Like there was a time period where print was, you got 100 ads in your print mailbox because that was the only method and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And there's a whole generation of people that never experienced that. So what I thought when we sort of saw the trends, we acquired a company and so on 6-ish years ago. And that was one of the things they did is a print newsletter, a print, special reports and those sorts of things. And one of my real concerns was that, like, okay, but is this younger generation going to adapt to it? Because are they just going to be like, well, I don't want print. I just want it on my phone, or I just want it, wherever else. And in the early days of sort of technology adoption and talking about technology adoption, we would always think, well, that's the next generation is just going to say, well, I just want it on my phone, or I just want it digitally. And they're going to go to sort of 100% digital. What we're finding, though, is that the younger generations, because they've never received something personal like that when it comes to print mail, when they do receive it, it's extra special to them because they've never had that experience before.
It's a differentiator.
It's 100% is a differentiator. And I think that's one of those points where you look at it and you've got a guy like me who writes code telling you, yeah,
kill
no,
a tree.
print is a different. Exactly. Go kill a tree. Like, I'm sorry, but there's some balance to it, obviously. I think people, and this is sort of another conversation we're going to be having. We're speaking out in Buffalo coming up in September 15th. And one of the things we were talking about is sort of this notion where for a long time, you could stand out with certain bits of whatever tech. Like, just by having a website, you could stand out.
Absolutely.
I mean, heck, at one point in time, just by having a cell phone instead of a pager was like a standout for whatever.
Yeah.
And I think we've reached this point where, because we're capping off in terms of the speed of, or the rate at which technology is advancing, that agents are having to sort of pause and go, well, I can't keep going to that well.
Right.
Like, that well is drying up. The well of just adopt the next new thing, that well is starting to dry up.
Yep.
And I think agents are now going to have to start figuring out either some other wells to go to, or how do I balance, some of the things that I'm doing with online and digital with print, or how do I start balancing some of these things a little bit better? Because I think that, like I said, that well is dry for the most part.
So the differentiation thing does manifest itself many different ways, right? So email became passé because it became so clogged, and then texts became the thing. Is the metaverse next, right? Text became
so actually, that's a really great question, Tim, in terms of the metaverse. I think VR could eventually be a technology that fundamentally changes how we're doing certain things. Like VR technology and the notions of virtual reality. Okay, so VR, we all know the like headsets,
right?
But they're building full body haptic feedback suits where,
how haptic we talking about here?
Thank you to the porn industry for doing this. I'm not joking. So if you want to know what's happening in technology or what technology to invest in, you should literally just follow what the biggest porn companies invest in, because they have driven most of the technological advancements over the last roughly 2,500 years.
Well, they're half the internet traffic. Isn't there some like crazy statistic?
They're more than half the internet traffic. Most people don't know that they actually saved the Gutenberg, the printing press, and like the whole. So the printing press was losing money because the church wanted Bibles printed, but at the time nobody could read. Because we're in the Middle Ages and no one can read.
Yeah.
So they're printing all these books, and they have stacks and stacks and stacks of books, of Bibles that they can't give to anybody, because they've given Bibles to all the churches and everybody that can read, and so on and so forth.
And as Yoda would say, page turner, it is not.
So The church was in the middle of rescinding some of the funds from the printing press company and saying, hey guys, like we can't keep funding Bibles that nobody's doing, that nobody's
Right.
using, or that we have an excess of, or so on and so forth. So they decided to, the company themselves decided to run a slightly pornographic cartoon that went wild and started getting sold everywhere because people didn't have to read, and it
Ankles
was
Illustrated.
and and exactly, it was like Ankles Illustrated, like it was like tawdry
Forearms.
whatever, but
Would
that
you look at the
funding is what
knuckles on her?
actually I mean, but that funding is what ended up saving the printing press.
Yeah.
Right? You flash forward to video quality, right? Like Betamax, 4K quality,
Yep.
virtual reality in general. And then the next stages of virtual reality are what are called haptic feedback, which is essentially the receptors in our skin are spaced so far apart. And if you can create something that essentially is close enough to mimic whatever it is, your brain and your skin and the receptors will kind of do the rest. So
Right.
for a while, they were doing it on plates, where they had these plates where you could press a button and you would touch it and it would feel like wood. And then you touch it again, and it would feel like marble. And then you touch it again and it would feel like, whatever,
That's
right?
nuts. That's crazy.
Wild.
Yeah.
So that's coming. Like that, there is a future where these haptic feedback suits and virtual reality, like, yes, we might replace some home showing. Or for example, if we're talking about builders and this whole thing about how builders, I know some of these things were rescinded about builders being able to build model homes or show homes or
Right.
whatever it is kind of stuff, but they wouldn't have to do that anymore. Right. The VR, you'd walk through a VR and go, well, I want this bedroom and I want that addition and I want this version of the house. Right. Very Ready Player One. The challenge is we're not there yet.
But we're getting there. I mean,
We're
in
getting
fairness,
there.
right? There's virtual staging. There is,
Yep.
the Matterport and the 3D walkthroughs, and none of these are things that require like looking like a scuba diver or even wearing
Yep.
goggles. You just do it on your iPad or your device, and you're literally in someone's pantry closet, walking into their kitchen through to the family room. I mean, that's been here, and it's been
Absolutely.
here for 6 or 8 years. But
Right.
the whole
But
AI virtual reality thing is kind of what I would say is what's next, or we're in the midst of that kind of next thing, but there's so much more to
Yep.
come.
Oh yeah, there's a ton more to come in that. And I think the reason I said we're not quite there yet is the way I think about it is you're totally right. That is more of an we'll call it augmented reality experience.
Yeah.
Where you can see it on your computer and you can still kind of virtually walk through the home and on your computer and so on. But that's a little bit more either AR side or just virtual tour kind of stuff, which we've seen for a long, long time. I'm more talking the actual like headsets, virtual reality kind of component. And we've kind of seen the adoption of the headsets and so on peak off a little bit.
Yeah.
Like we haven't seen as much adoption of that. And I think we will, as years go on, see more and more adoption of that. The technology get better, all of that sort of stuff get better. But that's not something that a real estate agent is going to go out tomorrow and say, well, my differentiator is that I work with virtual reality. And so like we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. I agree.
Right.
Artificial intelligence, I think, though, is very much a differentiator now. You don't think so?
Yeah, I think what
I'll tell you what
I think what a lot of people are calling AI is not actual AI.
That's probably fair also. That's probably
Most
fair
of the
also.
actual AI systems have gotten turned off.
So
So Google built an AI system and then lost some control of it in a closed environment, so they turned it off. Microsoft built an AI system in a controlled environment and then lost some control of it, so they turned it off. Do you remember the Twitter bot that was AI? They got baited into saying all the racist terms.
Oh dear.
Okay,
don't,
so
but
Microsoft made an AI, and then they made a Twitter account for the AI. And the AI was supposed to interact with Twitter and like a human, right? So the old notion is what's called the Turing test, which is how long can this thing pretend to be a human without a human figuring out, no, this is a robot, right?
right.
We really haven't ever passed the Turing test. Like no system has, and the systems that have then end up getting wonky in their own way. Where, so for example, this Twitter one that we're talking about.
Right.
So they put this AI system out, and when we're talking about AI, we're talking about artificial intelligence, which has a background of what's called machine learning, which
Yes.
means that the computer program is learning by itself based on the input and the data and the so on that it receives from whatever outside, is going on.
Right.
So Microsoft builds an AI, they put it on Twitter, and they make a Twitter bot for it. And within like a day, because the way they set up the AI was that the personality of the AI itself would. Yes, there it is. I love it. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that up, Tim.
So
Twitter taught Microsoft's AI chatbot to be a racist asshole in less than a day.
So this bot sort of absorbed what was out on Twitter.
Yes.
Like in an enormous way. It absorbed all that. And because there was so much.
And then there were also people who realized that this bot got put live. So they were actively trying to put racist, etc. content in front of it so that it would adapt to its machine learning would then adapt. And then all of a sudden, but literally within one day of AI being turned on in a public space, it was tweeting racist asshole comments. That's what Microsoft's AI is, right?
Garbage in, garbage out, right? A lot of garbage was put in. Yeah.
Google's AI, Google has built a number of different AIs, and they're doing it all in controlled environments where it's not open to the open internet. It's not like there's certain things that it's not able to do just in case.
Right.
One of the AI systems that Google put in place was they set up 3 different AIs, 2 AIs to communicate with one another, to try to send a message between one another, and then 1 AI to try to break in to get the message being sent between the 2 AIs. Okay. Now, there's a chart where it scales at the very beginning where the AI trying to break in has a little bit of success of it breaking in to the encryptions and to the messages being sent between the 2 other AIs. And then it basically is just like a flat line down. I'm sure Tim's trying to find this one right now too, but it essentially flat lines out. And then all of a sudden the 2 AIs are communicating in a way where the other AI has no chance of breaking in. It's 100% like unpenetrable communication, right? But then Google realizes that the AI has started changing the language itself to make it more efficient within the program. So instead of saying 3, it would like represent like ... which is faster and smaller kilobits and so on to send. So it actually started adapting and changing the messages that it was sending. And then Google figured out that there were sub messages. Remember how like telegraph writers used to be able to send sub messages inside of a telegraph?
Yes.
Like back in like World War II or whatever.
Yeah, that's code.
The AIs were doing that. The AIs were sending sub messages inside of the messages they were supposed to be sending while trying to so on. And at that point, Google was like, we're shutting off this AI right now.
Google was like
this. Yeah, like, nope, click, done. Like we're like, nope, right? So this whole notion of AI and machine learning I think we're going a little far in terms of calling it AI. I think there are some really, really advanced algorithms, and I think there are some intelligent machine learning components into what we're doing. But I also think that people think we are much further ahead in terms of the world of AI than we are right now.
Well, I
We're
think
not.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're not.
the chat bots are what I would be referring to, that are like watching databases,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So one of the
And
things
I would
that
say.
we do
Oh,
is
sorry. Go ahead.
we have a CRM, and it has YLOPO inside it. And it used to be that if you had a what you would call a nurture prospect, in other words, they're not ready to act, call me in 6 months.
Yep.
You better call them in 6 months. But even if you do call them in 6 months, which takes incredibly organized follow-up, something happened 2 months prior that you weren't privy to. So this actually watches their predictive analytics on their web, and then it wakes up when it's like, you better call them now. But that's a very rudimentary example. And what I think of,
and that right, and that's sort of what I mean about we in this industry, we're very good and we're very bad about mixing terms on and trying to be fancy and say, well, I'm going to teach you a class on AI, but it actually has absolutely nothing to do with AI. What you're talking about is predictive analytics, right? Or heuristic math.
Yep.
Or things of that nature, where they're incredibly cool. I mean, we're getting way better at doing predictive analytics. We're getting way better at automating certain things and automating certain components of what we are doing.
Right.
But none of that stuff is AI. None of that stuff is that's just advanced algorithms, and they're awesome. Like, don't get me wrong, they're incredibly cool algorithms, but the true like machine learning AI systems, there's one of two: either the ones that you're using in the wild, like Microsoft has a thing that they call an AI system, an API that you can use to measure data and do different things and so on and so forth. It's got so many hard limitations on it. It's not really AI, because the limitations on machine learning means that it's not an open system. It's not really 100% AI. It's partial, or it's whatever it might be. But I think, to your point, the automations and the streamlining of a lot of what we're doing is really key for real estate agents. Like, on an everyday basis, that's the sort of the differentiator, is the automation component to things.
Absolutely. And it's necessary, in my opinion, to not be drowning in red or one single color, right? It introduces blue or green or something, and it becomes a differentiator. And I got to say, with real estate agents in general, the avatar, the personality profile of a real estate agent is not someone who's terribly organized. All right? Not so. If they're standing in front of you,
fair.
If they're standing in front of you, and right here, prime example, if they're standing in front of you, they can identify a need, they can build trust, they can come up with solutions, they can troubleshoot, they can be very, very persuasive, they can listen. However, 2 weeks later, following up on that is hard for them. Why? Because they're being persuasive and troubleshooting for the person that's in front of them there. And it takes a whole other tributary skill set of being organized and great at follow-up and everything like that in order to marry the two. And that, to me, is where technology is so profoundly important, because if you don't have some sort of set it and forget it system for follow-up, you are going to lose an enormous amount of opportunities and income.
That's literally why we do what we do. I mean, I'll shamelessly plug it, but that's literally what.
Let's talk about
that's literally what Service for Life does. I mean, our company, Service for Life, this is a newsletter and then a whole sort of set of systems that go with it. It is something that we actually acquired and has been working for agents for 20 plus years. We're going on 25 years of agents using the same system and actually it working for them. And we're talking like working to the extent of people tell me this is literally the only thing they do in their business and that's it. They get 100% of their business from this and they don't have to worry about anything else. And essentially it's an old school newsletter that has very little to do with real estate. Most of the content is all like, how to save money for college, how to organize your house, how to organize your garage, how to like helpful how-to type content.
Yep.
And the reason we do that is I always think about it with agents and I take them through a couple things. So one, if you get, I'll break down the math. Okay. So a transaction happens once every roughly 8 years. Someone lives in their home roughly 13 to 14, but when you add in, second homes, rental properties, all that sort of stuff, an actual transaction happens roughly every 8 years.
Yep.
Now you start figuring out how much money you want to make in whatever year it is. And we'll say you want to make more than $100,000. Okay. Now in your market, the median home price is definitely higher than what I'm going to do for math, but just to make it accessible for everybody.
Yep.
Let's say median home price is 200,000.
Okay.
And you do a 3% co-broke, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're walking away and granted, you're going to have some fees, you're going to have some other stuff with that. But let's say you're roughly walking away $6,000, right? Top line.
Yep.
Okay. So at that means you need 18 deals at a $200,000 median home range to make over $100,000 in GCI.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is math.
Now
you're using math right now. Yes.
It's hard math, hard to argue with this one. Okay.
Yes.
So 8 times 18, because if people only buy a home every 8 years and you need 18 transaction sides a year to get your $100,000, 8 times 18 is 144.
Yep.
That means if you do 100% of deals within a list of 144 people, you will make over $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
The trick is, can you do 100% of 144 people?
Gonna say no.
Right?
Gonna say no. Hard to
gonna say no. You might lose a person here, a person there, but what I've seen is that the differentiator between the agents who struggle and the agents who are really consistent and do really well in their business is the difference between, do I capture 10% of those 144 or do I capture 70% of those 144?
That's correct.
Because I think 70% is realistic. I think if you are doing a touch point, and you can look at all sorts of different math, but the American Marketing Institute says roughly every 21 days, you need to like follow up with a lead so that they stay warm, so that they stay top of mind, so that they stay all of those sorts of things. So again, we'll just break that down in math. That means every month you've got to do one thing, and every other month you've got to do 2 things. And that's it.
Right.
Right?
And this is where you come in.
And this is where we come in. This is where we come in and go, okay, we're not about, I want to go generate 10,000 leads for you on Facebook that you'll probably talk to like 3 of them and then have, 2 of them are looky-loos and all that sort of stuff, right? What we do is we make sure that your top 150, your top 200 people are the folks who are making sure that they're doing business with you.
Yeah.
And the fun part about that math that we just did, that doesn't even include referrals.
Mm-hmm.
That's just deals inside those number of people that they are going to do themselves. That doesn't even include the referrals that you can end up getting on top of actually following up with that small sphere of people of 150 to 200 people.
So the underpinning of this is a intelligent, scalable way of staying top of mind with your sphere, the people who know you, like you, and trust you, past clients, friends and family, etc.
And I'm going to teach everybody a little trick, a little psychology trick.
Okay.
For how to do this in a way where staying top of mind is a little bit different.
Okay.
So most people think, when they think of staying top of mind, and I need to be that top of mind agent, what everybody thinks about immediately is, well, I need to send something or do something proactive to be top of mind. Meaning, I need to send a letter, I need to send a postcard, I need to send an email, I need to do whatever in terms of follow-up to be whatever it is. Okay.
Right.
Well, here's a psychology trick. So, has anyone ever taught you a shortcut around town when you're driving?
Sure. I used to deliver pizza for Domino's, dude. I know every shortcut.
You know, shortcut.
Yeah.
So the people that taught you specific shortcuts, do you think of that person like 80% of the time that you take whatever shortcut it is?
Yeah. I mean, if someone shows me a hack, if someone shows me something clever, they will always be sort of an anchor memory when I do that. Right.
Do that thing. Right.
So I think of this is like not a hack, but this is my friend Elizabeth Ramsey Golden in Alabama. This is my favorite coffee mug, by the way. But there's, look, there's other things. There's other things. The late great Joe Ferrara gave me insights about, blogging, right? What do I do that makes me think of Bill Lublin? There's things I think about. I do it, and I think of the people that kind of taught it to me, or suggested it to me, or that sort of thing. So I'm with you there.
Yep. So, and that's where, for us, the majority of the content that we're creating, like I said, is not real estate related.
Right.
Because think about it. You have 8 years between transactions. Again, mathematically, we know that people spend 12-ish months, depending if you're on the buy or sell side, but 12-ish months before actually making a move, being a looky-loo or whatever. And that leaves research, right? Yeah. But that leaves 7 years where people don't care at all about real estate. Maybe if the market is going wild, they will want to know the price of their home or things of that nature. But the reality is that, like, nobody really cares about real estate. And the thing that I see agents doing all the time is sending these glossy, fancy things that are immediately going to get thrown in the recycling bin newsletters.
Yep.
They either do that, or they send a letter that is 100% about themselves and their update and what they've done that month and how cool they are. And I love, even my friends, I love you, but I don't care. Like, I do, but I don't. Do you know what I mean? If I want that update, and I do want that update, I want to go sit down and have dinner with you and get that update from you and have a real conversation about it, and not get it in some letter like I need to be reading your diary. Like, that's not
huge mistake,
an enjoyable form to me.
Huge mistake they make is that in order to stay top of mind, I have to be loudest.
Yes, absolutely true.
And really, what you're discussing here is, it's not the volume, like the octaves or the decibels. What it is, it's I am going to bring value to you. It's not a solicitation, which is annoying as hell.
Yep.
Because we are not, and I've said this to my agents, when they get frustrated, I sent a mailer out, no one called. Well, we're not selling bread, right? If I owned a bakery and I wanted to, liquidate old stock or have a sale or, pay for my vacation, I would go out and I would run a special in every church bulletin and just go nuts on Sunday morning, and I would sell more bread because everybody is going to want half price donuts or whatever, right? But people don't move that often, and you can't make them. Moving sucks. It's a pain in the ass. People don't move that often. If your kid is a sophomore in high school, you're not going to move, all things being equal. You're not going to move for at least 2 years.
Yep.
Because guess what? It's not bread. It is shelter, and it happens much less frequently. So you've got to do that soft, bring value or risk being muted.
Stay in touch, stay in front of people and Tim just commented quality over quantity, but it's totally true. Like, hosting, we did something on Agent Inner Circle where we gave away a free Halloween kit where you can host a both in-person and digital Halloween party where you do pumpkin carving competitions and people take pictures and post their pumpkins into the group and the Facebook group. And then they actually have an in-person version of it where people online are interacting with the in-person version of this. And we gave a free, because I had the idea of like, that would be really cool with turning some of our client appreciation parties into like combo digital and physical events. So how do we host a digital Halloween party? So I put together a whole kit on, well, what are the rules of the group? What are the contest prizes? What are the contest rules? What are the we even gave away a banner, like a group banner. Well, here's the amazing part. So some agents started taking this, not only doing it to their sphere, but they started posting, because they were doing giveaways, started posting these groups in Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and community boards and so on. And before you knew it, they had thousands of people in their group posting pumpkin pictures because they want to be involved in this pumpkin carving contest.
And
right? Like,
I would imagine that is good for growing the database and getting the name out.
Absolutely. Right. All of it is put on by so-and-so agent or put on by so-and-so brokerage or so on and so forth. But to me, it's one of those things where when we talked before, we looked for places where you could send somebody something that was special, that would keep them reminding, like every time you did that thing or thought of that thing or that trick or that whatever, you remembered them. So one of my suggestions in that contest was send everybody pumpkin carving stencils for your like top 100 list, like the people that you really like. This is my list. This is my power list. They send me business every year. They send me referrals, etc. I'm going to send them pumpkin carving stencils and a little pumpkin carving kit at Halloween. And do you think every Halloween from now forward, when they pull out those stencils to use them, do you think they're going to think about you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know what's fun about you? This is what's fun about you. To go from machine learning QR codes to pumpkin carving so smoothly. Like, work pumpkin carving in, but make it look natural. I don't know that I would have been able to do that, planning ahead. So,
well, I'm glad it's unscripted.
That therein lies the point, right there, Alex. Therein lies the point. And by the way, I got to go back to something you said about the bots talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I read on Reddit somewhere a funny thing. I think it was Shower Thoughts, that somewhere on a dating site, two bots are talking to one another and neither one is getting anywhere. They're not getting anywhere with one another.
Send me nudes. No, you send me nudes first.
Click on this link. Click on this link.
Oh, it's so true. That's funny. Yep.
So here's a question I've always wondered about. How is it that a person with your skill set, talents, and interests became so enamored with helping real estate agents. And, what brought you into this industry?
So there's kind of two sides of this. And what Tim just brought up is our agentinnercircle.com site. I just want a quick plug. This is 100% free. Like, there is nothing we charge for on this site whatsoever. There are handouts, templates, almost every art. The differentiator between us and most marketing sites is most marketing sites are like, hey, here's a cool marketing idea. Now, good luck figuring it out. Have a great day. And you're off to like figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
Our differentiator is everything we do has some kind of template, handout, download, something you can go use in your business that day without having to go figure it out yourself the first time, kind of a thing. So when you talk about helping in the industry or whatever, I do a lot of this stuff. But what got me from where I was to this point? So I'll try to give the shorter version of this. I was working for a tech company in New York City.
Mhm.
The guy that I was working for is the most ridiculous boss you've ever met. And I'm talking like I'm including TV shows. Like
Okay.
I'm including like The Office. Like if you think The Office was ridiculous, this guy like is like
Whoa.
next level.
Broke the mold.
Like it
Okay.
was broke the mold. Like any boss you can think of, he was. So my very last week working there, I was supposed to be running operations for the company. He wanted me to manage purchasing, and so the company itself was doing like 30 million plus in revenue a year. He wanted me to manage purchasing and receiving of all of everything, but mostly the computer and technology components with no system, no tracking, no packaging, no monitoring, no system whatsoever. So I couldn't live that way. So I taught myself VB script and built a very simple access program that I could use to adopt and work for this company. He didn't even give it the time of day and was like, no, we're not using that. I kept using it personally and it was super helpful for us, but whatever. So he decided to move a data center from Trumbull, Connecticut, where there's like real actual data center with like, dual power grids and air conditioning and the whole nine, to the third floor of an 1860s brownstone in Midtown Manhattan on 50th between 1st and 2nd Ave. That is residential zone. He owned the building.
Huh?
So he owned the building and he owned the building in New York, but he was renting in Connecticut. But the building he owned in New York was like wooden beams. So we're talking like 40 or 50,000 pounds of servers on wooden beams, to the point that it bowed the floors so bad that you could drop a pen and it would roll down one side and up the other and like pendulum. The guy's trying pendulum. I'm glad you like that.
First dad joke of the second.
So, or the electrician who piped the AC incorrectly, and it became someone's job to remove a bucket off of the top of the server racks full of water, like that kind of stuff. And we were doing stuff like faxing military medical records or running the entire supply chain for Toyota Denso, like that kind of stuff. So that week I had worked 110-hour week. We had just finished moving everything into this new place. And I had sat down for a second. We're talking, I was hourly at that point. So I was literally 110 on the books. The dude wakes up from under his desk, comes out and proceeds to tell me and one of my colleagues how my generation's work ethic is total trash and our generation will never understand work ethic. And I said, well, you know what happens to the trash, right? It gets taken out.
Yeah.
And I walked out the door. And that was the only job I've ever actually like left.
Yeah.
But at that point, I had a very basic system that I had built. that was this like, tracking and monitoring system. At the same time, we knew that we wanted to get into mobile technology in general, that was the future. That was the next tech boom. That was where, plus, total side note to all this, at the last company that I worked at, because we ran Toyota Denso's worldwide supply chain, Denso is who invented the QR code. So I was working with the guy in Japan who invented the QR code to run their international tracking system, and was like present when everyone sort of started realizing, oh my gosh, we could use these with phones, and we could use these for like other stuff because it's just embedded media, like
Really?
like that sort of a thing. Yeah. So that was kind of cool getting to meet him and like getting to, but that's where a lot of the ideas around the whole QR code and mobile technology and that stuff started coming about, was at this last company, working with Denso, working with the supply chain and QR codes. I started realizing, wait, mobile's the next tech. Mobile's where this is going. QR codes have a place in this, and started realizing that. And at the same time said, you know what, I'm done with this job, basically. And so we started doing a little bit of research when we were looking at mobile, and we started saying, okay, well, what industries make the most sense when it comes to mobile technology? Who's going to be the best adopters of mobile technology early on?
You called
And
it.
the three that we did were real estate, hotels and resorts, and conferences and events. And we built platforms for all three. We actually had Choice Hotels as a client for a little while. And then they brought a lot of their stuff in-house. The conferences and event system, and the other thing a lot of people don't know about my first business, really all of them, is that I bootstrapped it. So there was no outside capital. There was no Series A. There was no funding. There was like $1,000 in a bank account and a dream. And we go from there and pray and so on.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Right. So, those were the three industries that we quickly realized. And the challenging part, though, so we actually built conferences and events and hotels and resorts before we built real estate. And the reason being is because of the MLS iron gates. Where I had to, and think about this conceptually at the time, right? So I wanted to make a product that used MLS data. But I couldn't use MLS data to test or build my product without a brokerage or an agent saying you have access to the data to build the product.
Right.
But the product doesn't exist. So how do I sell the product that doesn't exist to the agent so that they'll give me access to the data so that I can build the product that they then, right? So I literally sold our first real estate, like not on a paper napkin, but I incentivized the deal in other ways and I will thank my mom forever for this. One of the things, so my mom did the events industry for a really, really long time. She did visual design for the events industry. We're not talking party planning. We're talking like the richest of the rich throw parties. And she does 25-foot robots out of foam core.
Okay.
Or
all right.
Stuff like that, like these amazing whatever structures. So at the time, Peabody and Smith Realty needed a new display booth, because they were going down and displaying at the ski expo and golf expo and so on shows. So what I did was I went to my mom and I said, this isn't going to be free. This is going to be a paying job, but it's below what you would normally like. They got to a point where if you didn't have 50 grand to spend in flowers, and I'm not talking 50 grand final budget, I'm talking 50 grand just on the
for
cost
flowers.
of flowers
Yeah,
themselves,
yeah.
they weren't even looking at your job, kind of a thing.
Right.
So I said to her, this isn't going to be that, like, we're not in your ballpark, but
Not a
you're going to
big
get
fish.
paid for this.
Right.
Right. But I did a combo deal. I got creative where I, all in one deal, got them to buy the app and the mobile website, give us MLS access to buy it, and get the booth built under one contract to get them to go to it so I could get my first MLS data.
That's a good first step. That's a lot of moving parts to manage too. So let me tell you something. So one of the things that is fun, and I warned you about this, the time is going to fly by.
Yep.
And you and I have this penchant for talking and then going down a rabbit hole, which is why we do this.
Yeah.
So we don't need to script it.
Well,
I could go on.
Can I add one
Finish,
part
yeah.
To that? Because I do want to finish it, because there's, to me, a difference where you asked how we ended up in real estate.
Yeah.
And that sort of answers the question, I think, of why we first ended up there.
Right.
But I think for me, the bigger question always ends up being, well, why are we still there? Like, this is 12 years later now from that.
Yep.
You know, this is a very different world. And I think for me, one of the reasons that I really enjoy real estate and doing what I do in real estate, and sort of the longevity of it, is that I feel like the people that I'm able to work with at every single level are entrepreneurs. And that's not the same in hotels. That's not the same in events. Like, you do an event, it's this big ramp up, and then the event's over, and then you might not talk to them for a certain amount of time, even if you are doing the next year's event, right? It's this weird interaction, and it's very rare to get somebody saying, like, this changed my business, this changed my life and my financial freedom, this, did things like that for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's something in real estate where I've really been able to find that sort of passion, where I get people who will call me out of the blue saying, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've done 2 deals in a weekend. Like, those phone calls to me are why I'm still here 12 years later, is that I didn't experience in other industries the same way, is that everybody is their own entrepreneur, and the people will call you with those successes and say, like, that sort of stuff. That's why I'm still here. Is that
let me tell you, that was worth waiting for. Right. And like, I so relate to it, because, as a broker, as someone who has to, and we do the same thing to a degree, we teach people to fish.
Yep.
Right. We teach people to fish. We don't give them fish. We teach them to fish. And that is very, very different from working with an employee. Yep. A person who has to eat what they kill is going to be profoundly grateful and loyal to a better mousetrap, if you will, or a better fishing net. Right.
And speaking of better mousetrap, this is where you said, and this is the fun part, right? You said we both teach people how to fish, and you're 100% correct. Yep. What's fun about Agent Inner Circle and that blog and how I run that blog is, what I've realized with agents is, they don't just want you to teach you how to fish. They want you to catch the first fish for them and then fillet it gently over some nice butter and some nice, and then they want to serve it up right. But I try to come somewhere in the middle where we're teaching people to fish, but I always want to give them that first fish too, where I'm showing them, hey, we're going to catch the first fish together. And here is that first fish. I'm going to give you that first fish that we caught together so that you see the value in it.
And you can
moving
see
forward
how it's done. You know, you learn by observing to a large degree. You kind of mentor them and everything like that. Well, I got to tell you, this was every bit as fun as I knew it would be. And I kind of wish we had more time, but we
well,
don't.
We can always do it again. It's right.
And
that's the beautiful part about there being a future. We have
will.
opportunities.
And we will. So I want to thank you. And I hope we've put all your stuff up. Best way to reach you is Alex at agentinnercircle.com.
That's perfect. Yep.
All right. So folks, for
if
all
you
of
can't find me, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
You're
exactly.
You're not looking. If you can't find me, you're not looking.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on.
You.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you asking me to do this, and it's been an honor. So thank you.
Right back at you, brother. Take her away, Timothy.